He said he was going camping, just a few days away with the guys. I even packed his favorite thermos and the old flashlight that barely worked. That's the thing about love. It makes you care for someone, even when you've started noticing the cracks in their stories. He kissed me on the forehead before leaving. It wasn't a real kiss. It was the kind of kiss that feels like punctuation, an ending disguised as affection. But I told myself not to I always told myself that night, I sat by the window, the house too quiet, the clock ticking louder than usual. He'd left his cologne hanging in the air, the one I used to love. Now, it just smelled like absence. I remember glancing at his phone on the counter. The same phone he forgot for the first time in years. That was my first sign. He was careful, almost rehearsed. But even liars leave something behind. I didn't mean to go through it. Not really. I just wanted to check if he'd texted to say he arrived safely. But when the screen lit up, I saw her name, my best friend's name. I froze. My chest tightened, and the air around me thickened. There was no guilt, no mistake, no misunderstanding. The preview of the message said, "Enough. Can't wait to finally call you my husband." The words sliced through me with surgical precision. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat there, staring at the screen. The reflection of my own face looking back, quiet, shocked, small dot. That was the moment I realized that betrayal doesn't roar. It whispers. It doesn't tear you apart all at once. It lets you crumble piece by piece, pretending it's giving you time to understand. I opened his gallery next. Camping, no, white sand, a beachfront hotel, her hand in his. And in one photo, the corner of a veil caught the sunlight. He hadn't gone camping. He'd gone to marry the woman I once trusted with every secret of my life. I scrolled until I couldn't anymore. My hands trembled, but my face stayed calm. The betrayal didn't make me cry. It made me still, the kind of stillness that comes before a storm. The house around me looked different now. The wedding photos on the wall mocked me. The couch, where we used to fall asleep watching movies, felt like evidence. Every piece of my home was now part of their lie. I wanted to burn it all, but instead, I took a deep breath and decided, no, I wouldn't break tonight. I'd let the night breathe first, let the silence gather its strength. Because sometimes, revenge doesn't need rage. It only needs patience. I turned off the lights, left his phone exactly where it was, and went to bed. Sleep didn't come, but clarity did. And by morning, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The next morning, the sun rose like nothing had changed. The world doesn't stop for heartbreak. It just keeps moving, as if your world isn't lying shattered in its wake. I made coffee, just like always, even though my hand shook a little when I poured the water. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the phone he'd left behind, the device that now held my entire marriage in pixels and lies. I unlocked it again, this time not trembling, but steady, methodical. I scrolled through his messages, screenshots, and plans. Their conversations were long, dreamy, full of the kind of affection that had once belonged to me. He'd promised her things, a future, a home, a life, and written those promises using the same words he once said to me. He called her my peace. Funny. That's what he used to call me. Each photo told a story. Plane tickets booked under fake names, hotel reservations, a white dress hung on a chair, her laugh caught in a candid selfie as he kissed her cheek. He didn't even look guilty. He looked free. I felt something unfamiliar then. Not sadness, not rage. It was cold, deliberate focus. The kind that settles in when you realize that being broken doesn't make you powerless. It makes you precise. I started gathering everything, screenshots, dates, messages. I forwarded it all to my email, creating a quiet digital trail. Every photo became a weapon, every word a confession. Then, I deleted the sent items, closed the phone, and returned it to the counter. No trace. He called around noon. From her phone, I didn't answer. Let him think I was at work, unaware, still playing the devoted wife he'd already abandoned. That night, I sat with my laptop, the screen glowing like a mirror. I searched flight details, checked timestamps on his photos, and tracked every location tag. Within an hour, I knew exactly where they were. A luxury resort by the coast, just 2 hours away. A honeymoon suite. He hadn't even waited to make it private. The irony of it all struck me. He'd chosen to hide his betrayal in plain sight. He assumed I was too trusting, too soft, to ever question him. That's what betrayal does. It feeds on the image of the person you used to be. But that version of me was gone. I opened a new browser tab, local law enforcement, fraud reports, identity deception. bigamy statutes. I read for hours, cross-checking every detail. He'd used our joint account for his little vacation, and my name was still on the card. That was enough. Enough to make the law look twice. By midnight, I had everything ready. The screenshots, the receipts, the location. All I needed was the right time. He texted me at dawn, a simple message: out of service for a few days. Love you. I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen, then typed back, be safe, miss you. It wasn't forgiveness, it was misdirection. The next 2 days passed in slow motion. I moved through the house like a ghost, eating, working, smiling when neighbors waved. No one suspected anything. Not that my husband was on a beach pretending to be someone else's forever. Not that I was waiting to end his lie the same way he began it, quietly. On the third morning, I made the call. The officer on the other end listened carefully as I described the situation. A man traveling under pretenses, using shared finances, engaging in fraud and deception. I gave them the hotel name, the room number, everything. They said they'd send a unit to verify. I thanked them, hung up, and sat back in silence. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I just felt done. Around noon, I received an email notification, one of those travel promo subscriptions I never unsubscribed from. It had photos of the same resort he was staying in. I clicked through, almost absently, until one caught my attention. It was an image uploaded by another guest, a wedding happening by the pool. I zoomed in. There he was, in a light gray suit, and beside him, her, in white. They were holding hands, smiling, surrounded by people. A photographer was capturing the moment, and just behind the photographer, I could see 2 uniformed officers walking across the deck. My breath hitched. Even from hundreds of miles away, I could feel the shift in the air in that image, the moment the illusion broke, the moment their world stopped pretending. I don't know what he said when they approached. Maybe he tried to explain. Maybe he looked for me, realizing too late that the woman he'd discarded was the one who held the match to everything he built. I closed the photo, sat there for a long time. No tears, no shaking, just stillness, the kind that follows justice. By evening, I deleted his number, packed his things into boxes, called my lawyer. There were practical steps to take now: divorce filings, property division, and statements. But none of that mattered as much as the silence that finally filled the house. It wasn't the silence of abandonment anymore. It was the silence of peace, of reclaiming what he'd tried to ruin. People always think revenge has to be loud, that it needs to hurt to feel real. But sometimes, it's just watching the person who broke you unravel under the weight of their own choices. And as I turned off the lights that night, I realized something simple but sharp. He didn't just lose me, he lost the one person who knew how to save him when his lies caught fire. The news broke before I even expected it. It was early evening, a slow, heavy rain falling outside. I was sitting on the couch, half watching a true crime documentary, when my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. It was a video link. At first, I thought it might be spam, until I saw the thumbnail. It was him, my husband, standing in that same gray suit from the wedding photo. But this time, he wasn't smiling. The clip was shaky, clearly filmed by one of the guests. You could hear laughter turning into whispers, music stopping mid-beat. The camera panned across the poolside setup, flowers, champagne, and a small crowd watching as 2 police officers approached the groom and the bride. He looked confused at first, then panicked. His best man, one of his college friends, tried to step in, asking what was happening, but the officers already had paperwork in hand. The words were faint, barely audible under the murmurs: fraud investigation. The video caught the moment they handcuffed him. The gasp from the guests, the confusion spreading through the crowd, the way my best friend, the woman who had once held my secrets, backed away from him, as if she didn't know him at all. Then came her voice, trembling, defensive. This must be a mistake. But it wasn't. It was justice. The video cut off right as he turned his head, scanning the crowd, searching for someone to blame. His face twisted when he realized there was no one there to save him. I stared at that frozen frame for a long time. For a second, I thought I might feel triumphant, that raw satisfaction of seeing karma work with my own hands, guiding it. But what I felt was heavier, quieter. He looked small. Not the man who'd once promised me forever. Not the one who lied to my face, kissed me goodbye, and walked into another woman's life like mine never existed. Just a man stripped of all his illusions, and maybe that was the worst punishment of all. I turned off my phone and leaned back, closing my eyes. The rain outside had picked up steady and cleansing, beating against the windows like it was trying to wash something away. I let it dot the next morning. The messages started flooding in. Mutual friends, his relatives, even strangers who had seen the videos circulating online. Everyone wanted to know what happened. Is it true? Did you know? Were you part of it? I didn't answer anyone. Let them wonder. Let them piece together their own versions of the story. The truth didn't need defending anymore. It had already been proven. By noon, I got a call from a detective. Formal, polite. They confirmed the arrest, thanked me for my cooperation, and mentioned that my name was being cleared in their financial review. Apparently, my husband had been using our joint account for months, funding gifts, trips, even deposits under aliases. It wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. Do you wish to press additional charges, ma'am? I paused. The logical answer was yes, but something in me had already moved past it. No, I said softly. You already have what you need. He thanked me, said they'd be in touch. When the call ended, I looked around the quiet house. Our home, now mine. The walls didn't echo anymore. The silence didn't sting. It felt still. I boxed up the last of his things that afternoon, his old fishing gear, his camping supplies, all the props of the man he pretended to be. The irony wasn't lost on me. Going camping, he'd said, and maybe he really did, out into the wilderness of his own lies. That night, I sat by the window with a glass of wine, scrolling through the photos again, not to hurt myself, but to remember, to see the story for what it really was, the slow erosion of truth. He used to tell me that I overthought everything, that I imagined problems where there were none. Turns out, I was just seeing the truth too early. A week later, I went to file for divorce. My lawyer, a calm woman with tired eyes and sharp instincts, looked through the documents I'd brought, the screenshots, the bank records, the video. She exhaled softly and said, "You handled this better than most." I didn't feel like I had, but maybe that's what survival looks like. Quiet, deliberate, and lonely. As the weeks passed, the noise faded. His family stopped calling. Her social media disappeared. The world moved on, as it always does, leaving the wreckage behind for me to clean up. But I didn't mind. Each box I packed, each form I signed, felt like reclaiming something piece by piece. One evening, I received another message. This one from an unfamiliar woman. Her profile picture showed kind eyes. Nothing fake about her. She wrote, "I don't know you, but I saw what happened. I went through something similar. I just wanted to say, you did the right thing." I stared at that message for a long time before replying. Thank you. I didn't do it to hurt him. I just couldn't let the lie live longer than it already had. That was the truth. Because revenge wasn't my intention. It was just the byproduct of honesty finally catching up. Months later, when the divorce papers came through, I took them outside, sat on the porch, and signed my name. No shaking hands this time, no hesitation, just finality. Afterward, I walked down to the little lake near our neighborhood, the one we used to visit on quiet weekends. I stood by the water, watching my reflection ripple. The air was cold, but peaceful. I realized then that closure doesn't always arrive as forgiveness. Sometimes, it's the moment you stop needing answers from someone who was never capable of truth. He once told me that love meant never walking away, but I think real love means knowing when to stop standing still in a burning house. And so, I walked away. Back home, I deleted every trace of him left in my phone. Photos, messages, even his number. I left only one thing, a screenshot of the police standing behind him on that wedding day, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of what deceit costs when you think you'll never be caught. Because in the end, he didn't lose me because I stopped loving him. He lost me because I finally started loving myself more. After the papers were signed, silence became my only companion. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't that sharp kind of silence that follows betrayal, the kind that hums in your chest like static, waiting for answers that never come. No, this was different. It was clean. For the first time in months, I woke up and didn't feel that panic sitting on my chest. The world outside still looked the same crooked fence, the same half-dead roses near the porch, but it felt new. Maybe that's what healing really is. The same world seen through steadier eyes. I started with small things, a morning routine that was just mine, black coffee, no sugar, a walk before sunrise, music that didn't remind me of him. The house slowly began to sound different, softer, lighter. There were days when the ache came back, when I caught myself reaching for my phone to share something funny, only to remember he wasn't there. But instead of shoving that feeling down, I let it breathe. I sat with it, like an old scar that still twinged when the weather changed. One evening, while sorting through a pile of old receipts and papers, I found a photo of us at a campsite from years ago. He had his arm around me, laughing at something I couldn't even remember. For a moment, I felt that ghost of who we were before the lies. But then I looked closer. His smile, the same one that used to make me feel safe, suddenly looked like a mask I should have recognized long ago. I put the photo away and whispered to myself, "You're free now." And I meant it. Freedom doesn't announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it just sits beside you quietly while you make dinner for one and realize you're okay with that. A few weeks later, I joined a local community group. Nothing fancy, just people trying to rebuild their lives in small ways. A mix of divorcees, single parents, and retirees. It felt strange at first, introducing myself without the title of wife. But there was comfort in being seen as me again, not someone's shadow. One of the women there, Clara, had this contagious laugh and a habit of calling everyone sweetheart. Over coffee one afternoon, she said something that stuck with me. "You don't heal by proving you're over it. You heal by not needing to prove anything anymore." I didn't respond then, but that night, I thought about it over and over, because for so long, I had lived like my worth was measured by how well I held everything together. My marriage, my reputation, my silence, and now, for the first time, I didn't need to hold anything. The court hearings came and went quietly. He tried to reach out once, a letter hand-delivered through my lawyer. I never opened it. I didn't need to hear apologies that would only try to rewrite history. His choices spoke louder than his words ever could. A few months later, I heard he'd taken a plea deal. No jail time, but his career was done. His name, the one he guarded so fiercely, had become something whispered with pity. And as cruel as it sounds, I didn't feel bad. I just felt done. The funny thing about betrayal is how it sharpens your clarity. You start seeing things for what they are, not what you wish they'd be. I started trusting my instincts again, something he'd made me doubt for years. I went back to work part-time, consulting for a local firm. Nothing glamorous, but it felt good to be useful again, to have something that was mine, untouched by his deceit. I even picked up painting again, something I'd stopped doing when life became too loud. My hands were shaky at first, but soon, the colors started flowing, messy, bright, alive, like me. Sometimes, late at night, I still wondered why lie, why betray, why throw away everything we built. But I learned that why is a question that only traps you in circles. The truth was simple. People destroy good things when they're too weak to face themselves, and I refused to be collateral damage in his weakness. One afternoon, Clara invited me to a charity dinner. I almost said no. The thought of dressing up, being around couples, felt exhausting. But she insisted, and I gave in. That night, surrounded by laughter and conversation, I realized I hadn't thought about him all day. Not once. There was a man there, kind eyes, a gentle voice, and no pretenses. We talked about books, travel, and nothing serious. When he asked for my number, I hesitated, then smiled. It wasn't about romance, it was about knowing I could open a door again, even if I didn't step through it right away. On my way home, I caught my reflection in the car window. I looked older, sure, but lighter. The woman staring back wasn't broken anymore. She was rebuilding. A few days later, I visited the lake again, the same one where I'd stood after signing the divorce papers. The water was still, the air crisp. I sat on the same bench and took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for something to end or begin. I was just here. I thought about everything, the lies, the arrest, the loneliness that followed. And then I realized it all led me back to myself, the version of me I'd buried under compromise, under love that demanded silence. That night, I painted again, a quiet lake under gray clouds, light breaking through the center. When I signed my name at the bottom, it didn't feel like claiming victory. It felt like reclaiming peace. I once believed that losing someone meant losing part of yourself, but now I know, sometimes you have to lose them to meet the version of you that was waiting to be free all along. I poured the last of my wine, stood by the window, and whispered to the night, "Thank you for leaving," and for the first time, I meant it. There's something strange about healing. It never happens when you expect it to. It doesn't arrive with some grand moment of triumph or a dramatic breakdown. It seeps in quietly, like dawn light through curtains you forgot to close. Months had passed since I watched him in handcuffs, since I'd turned my back on the life that almost destroyed me. The world hadn't stopped for my heartbreak, but I had learned to move within it again, slower, more deliberate, less desperate. I started writing letters I never intended to send, to him, to her, my best friend who vanished after the scandal, her silence as sharp as her betrayal, to myself. Most of those letters ended the same way: you deserved better, and you survived. Sometimes that's all I needed to remind myself of. I stopped replaying the scenes that used to haunt me: the way his eyes darted when he lied, the softness in her voice when she pretended to comfort me, the sound of laughter that now tasted like poison. Those memories still came, but they didn't hold me hostage anymore. I'd learned how to let them pass, like background noise in a place I no longer lived. One evening, I went back to the storage unit where I'd packed the remnants of our marriage. The boxers had gathered dust, untouched since the chaos ended. I thought about leaving them there forever. But something inside me whispered, it's time. I opened the first box: wedding photos, anniversary cards, fragments of a love that once felt eternal. There we were, smiling, pretending the cracks didn't exist. I studied our faces like strangers, trying to see when the illusions started to rot. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but there was only stillness. I tore the photos, one by one, until the smiles disappeared into tiny pieces. Then I took them outside and burned them in a small metal bin. The flames flickered in the cold air, bright and hungry, swallowing the ghosts I'd carried for too long. Watching it all turn to ash felt like breathing again. When the fire died out, I whispered, you don't get to live here anymore. Not him, not her, not the pain. That night, I dreamed of a house with no doors, just open windows, the wind flowing freely. I woke up smiling for the first time in a long while. A few weeks later, I got an invitation from Clara. She'd been planning an art exhibit featuring stories of survival, local artists who turned pain into expression. She wanted me to show one of my paintings. I almost refused. The thought of standing in a room full of strangers, bearing my story through color and canvas, terrified me. But she just said, it's not about them knowing your pain. It's about you knowing it doesn't own you anymore. So I agreed. The night of the exhibit, the room buzzed with soft music and murmured conversation. My painting, The Lake Under Gray Clouds, with a streak of light breaking through, hung quietly on the center wall. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "What remains after fire." People stopped to look, some smiled, some just stood silently, as if they understood. And as I watched them, I realized I didn't need anyone to understand. The meaning was mine. A man approached me, older, kind eyes, the same one from the charity dinner months ago. He pointed to the painting. You can feel the peace in it, he said. Did you lose something? I smiled softly. No, I found something. We talked for a while about art, about resilience, about how the things we lose aren't always meant to be mourned. When the night ended, he asked if he could walk me to my car. I said yes, not because I needed him to, but because I wanted to. It was a small difference, but to me, it meant everything. When I got home, I stood by the window again, looking at the quiet street below. The city hummed, alive and uncaring, and for once, that didn't bother me. The loneliness that used to sting now felt like space. Space I could finally fill with something real. I poured myself a cup of tea and opened the window. The cold air rushed in, carrying with it the faint smell of rain. Somewhere, a dog barked. Somewhere else, a train passed. Ordinary sounds, but they grounded me. I thought about the fire, not the one that destroyed my marriage, but the one that burned inside me afterward. It had consumed everything false, everything fragile, and from it, something stronger had survived. Healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant remembering without falling apart before bed. I took one last look at the letter I'd written weeks ago, the one addressed to my ex. I'd written it not out of anger, but out of closure. It read, "You taught me how deeply love can wound, and how much strength it takes to walk away from it. I don't hate you. I don't forgive you either. I'm just done carrying you." I folded it neatly and slipped it into the fireplace. The flames caught quickly, curling the edges until the words turned to smoke. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like peace. In the morning, I'd start a new project, one that had nothing to do with loss, lies, or pain. Something bright, something that belonged only to me. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Not to him, not to anyone. And as I turned off the light, I realized something simple. Something quiet, but powerful. I'd stopped being the woman who was left behind. I'd become the woman who finally walked away. There's a strange peace that follows the end of chaos. It doesn't arrive with music or applause, just silence, a silence that no longer feels empty, but earned. I used to hate quiet mornings. They reminded me of how he used to fill the space, his footsteps, his voice, his lies. But now, I wake before dawn, open the curtains, and watch the light crawl across the walls of my apartment like something alive, forgiving. It's been a year, a full cycle of seasons since the day I saw the photos, since I stopped believing that love meant sacrifice. The world looks softer now. I've filled my days with small, deliberate things: painting, volunteering at the shelter, planting a single jasmine flower in the corner of my balcony. It's growing slowly, stubbornly, despite the cold. Sometimes I water it and think about how pain works the same way, how something broken still tries to bloom, if given the slightest chance. People ask me if I've moved on. I never know how to answer, because moving on sounds like forgetting, and I haven't forgotten. I've simply learned how to live beside the memory without letting it poison me. There's a difference. One afternoon, I got an email from his sister, the only one who ever truly believed me. She said he'd lost his job, that she hadn't heard from my old best friend in months. For a moment, I felt the old ache stirring in my chest, the pull of curiosity, of vindication. But it passed, because none of that mattered anymore. Their downfall wasn't my victory. My peace was. Still, I allowed myself a small smile, not out of cruelty, but closure. Sometimes, the universe doesn't need your help balancing things, it just waits for you to stop standing in the way. That evening, I walked down to the lake, the same lake we once visited years ago, before everything turned dark. The water shimmered in the fading light, calm and endless. I sat on the wooden dock, letting the wind tangle my hair. The air smelled like rain, and somewhere behind me, laughter drifted from a couple walking by. I didn't envy them, not anymore. I just hoped they understood what it meant to choose love without destroying someone else for it. I closed my eyes. For a second, I saw everything again: the hotel photos, the betrayal, the arrest. But then, just as easily, the image dissolved. My mind no longer clung to it. Grief had loosened its grip. It's strange how you spend years defining yourself by the people who hurt you, and then one day, you wake up and realize they don't exist in your story anymore. Not as villains, not even as ghosts, chapters you've already read. I took out my phone and opened the folder of unfinished paintings. One sketch caught my eye: a woman standing at the edge of a cliff, hair wild, light behind her. I'd started it months ago, intending to capture what freedom looked like. Now I knew. It wasn't joy or revenge, it was the absence of fear. I looked out at the lake and whispered, almost to the wind, "You can rest now." Maybe I was talking to him, maybe to the version of myself that stayed too long, hoping love would fix what respect had already left behind. Either way, the words felt final. As the sun sank lower, I watched its reflections stretch across the water, gold bleeding into gray. A small boat drifted in the distance, the sound of its engine faint and rhythmic. It reminded me of a heartbeat, of life continuing. I stood, brushing off the dust from my jeans. When I turned to leave, I saw something glinting on the dock. A small silver locket I hadn't noticed before. Someone must have dropped it. I picked it up, opened it. Inside was a tiny photograph of two children, and the words engraved, "Always come home." I smiled, left it on the railing for whoever lost it. Some things aren't meant to be kept. When I reached home that night, the jasmine plant on my balcony had bloomed, one small white flower, soft and trembling in the wind. I leaned down, touched its petals. It smelled faintly of forgiveness, and in that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone back into your life. It's about letting yourself step out of the fire they left behind. I poured a glass of wine, turned off the lights, and sat in the glow of the city outside my window. Every mistake, every betrayal, every tear, they had carved something stronger in me, a quiet kind of strength, the kind you don't need to show off, the kind you just live with. Before bed, I wrote one final line in my journal: "He took everything temporarily. I kept everything that was real." I closed it, exhaled, and for the first time in years, I slept without dreaming, because I no longer needed a story to explain my scars. I had already written the ending, and this time, it belonged to me. Some wounds never fully disappear. They just stop bleeding, and when they do, what's left isn't weakness, it's proof you survived. I used to believe betrayal was the end of love, but now I see it's only the end of illusion. The moment someone shows you who they really are, you stop loving the version you created in your head. The hardest part isn't watching them leave, it's realizing how much of yourself you gave to someone who never deserved to hold it. But even that pain serves a purpose. It burns everything false, leaving only what's real. I learned that forgiveness isn't a gift you give to others. It's the key you use to unlock yourself. And peace doesn't arrive when justice is served. It arrives when you stop replaying the moment you were wronged. Maybe you've been there, blindsided by someone you trusted, left standing in the ruins of something you thought would last. If so, listen carefully. Your story doesn't end in that moment. It begins right after. Every scar is a map back to yourself. Every ending is just a quiet beginning in disguise. If you're still in the middle of your storm, wondering why the world feels colder now, hold on. The pain won't stay forever, and when it finally fades, you'll see the truth in it. Sometimes the people who break you are the ones who build your strength. Sometimes losing everything false is how you finally meet who you are. So if someone once made you feel small, unworthy, replaceable, remember this. You are not what they saw in you. You are what survived after they left. And one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, you'll wake up and realize you're free, because revenge fades. Peace doesn't. So tell me, have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only to realize they were quietly rewriting your story behind your back? What did you do when you finally saw the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if stories like this speak to you about love, betrayal, and the strength that comes after, subscribe for more. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't about the people who hurt us, they're about the moment we stopped letting them.